Today, we're going to talk about being blinded by the light. Remember that song, Gretchen?
I do.
Blinded by the light. Okay. Um,
I think I had the lyrics wrong and I don't know what they were and I never sung them right. But then I think that one's like a famous like lyric conundrum. Just FYI for those
I'm
of you
pretty
that
sure that everybody has sang that incorrectly at a bar at one point in their life. I know
really
I have. I
loud.
had to Google
Yeah.
the lyrics because I thought today I was reflecting on a dialogue we had with somebody earlier this week. Our friend who is a real smart, very seasoned executive, former C-suite leader, investor himself, board member, brings legal and business background, really very wise and great conversation about leadership readiness for the AI era. And one of the questions that he brought up to us was, you're very clear on how human judgment and human discernment will really matter to making quality decisions in an age of AI where there's like we're drowning in competent data. And then he posed the question or the comment like maybe human judgment or discernment though hasn't been fully defined because let's look at something like the Kodak story from many years ago. Maybe there were biases at play, right? Or they were not clear on what the possibilities were, and they still made the judgment call that eventually led to their demise, right? And so we were reflecting on that, and I was thinking about it this morning, and I was like, well, it's not that they didn't have clarity. They had, and listen, this is not just the Kodak story, guys. This repeats, history repeats, right? So I think Gretchen, wasn't it? Google that originally invented the transformer that's
Mm-hmm.
behind every modern chatbot in about 2017, I
Mm-hmm.
believe.
Mm-hmm.
Fact checkers, you can check us. Um, but at that time, they declined to release a chatbot of their own because, of course, it would tank their search ad business, right? So that's a little bit of a nod to the current present day short term profitability focus. Even Intel passed on a opportunity. I was looking it up this morning. That Intel had a chance to buy a stake in OpenAI around 2017 or 2018, and they walked away, citing doubts that generative AI would pay off anytime soon, right? And unwilling to supply the chipset cost. So it's many times it's not that we don't have the technical clarity or that we don't have the even the business case clarity, but I think we can be blinded by the light of what we already know, blinded by the light of what already rewards us in the short
Mm-hmm.
term, blinded by the light of the way that we are recognized. And then that leads to cracks in how we can align with the future that's evolving, have the courage to take action in that direction, and then kind of co-create a way forward. And so it's a mistake that a lot of firms find themselves making time after time, even with when history gives us good examples. I used to teach an executive ed change agility session on learning from the Kodak case and how Fujifilm handled things differently in the digital, transformation. But beyond that, I think when we think about AI now, um, there's a lot of similar kinds of resistance coming up, and that's one thing we wanted to dig into. How are we potentially getting blinded by the light of what we already know, blinded by the light of the way things are rewarded, blinded by the light of how we even think about who we are and how we add value? So that's what we're going to dig in today. What are some of your thoughts on the clarity piece, Gretchen?
Well, right when you say clarity, there's so many systems that help us decide if we feel like we're clear.
Yeah.
There's freeze, flight, fight that all come into us making good decisions. When we're faced with something we're unsure, we're it's either unnamed, we're unsure about, or we're have a bias against already.
Mhm.
The first thing we do is freeze. And some people freeze really, for a brief second and then they get into action. And other people freeze and then it's, oh, but we're thinking, we're investigating. And in fact, naming it as thinking and investigating, but actually staying frozen.
Yeah.
Having worked for a corporation where that was the stance,
Yeah.
that really helped them miss
Mm,
incredible opportunities because they were still in freeze thinking about the action they were going to take. So there really wasn't any clarity, and the non-decision was a decision.
that's
So
so true.
that's now on an individual level, that feels really different in the body. And so one can, think, do I feel frozen? Do I feel like I want to run away from this problem? Or do I feel I'm going, I'm leaning in and I'm fighting? Like a human can take that and feel a felt sense in the body
Mm,
a little bit better than a group of humans that then try to make sense of what their stance will be. And that clarity, when many different humans are having different experiences somatically, become a bottleneck. And then whomever the leading human, their stance, it could be they're in a freeze stance and they're still thinking about it. They're not sure. The freeze then becomes the decision, which is not flight, but it's essentially to do nothing and see what happens.
mhm,
And then there's the fight or flight. And we know that either of them
mhm.
can not work in your favor if you aren't truly clear. So I think that it can play out in a lot of different ways. It's something that I'm interested in is that collective
Mm,
somatic system, because and we haven't talked about this at all, Leanne, so I don't want to throw a curveball, but the way that humans pick up on vibes or stances from people, even in the unspoken political undercurrent of what's happening in the company,
mhm,
that then really drives the behavior or the adoption or the shunning of new technology.
mhm,
So it's a very interesting, I mean, in many ways, companies are organisms, and they
mhm.
flex and they bounce up against things in
Yeah.
certain um, scenarios. And it's really interesting to see how we could feel one way, but the collective group feels a different way. And that collective group's energy makes the decisions
Yes.
or doesn't.
Yes. And so as an individual leader, what can you do about this, right? We want to get to at the end of this episode, the leader's move. Like, what are 4 moves that you could be making in the space of this? And what you're pointing to really kind of speaks to one of them, Gretchen, I think, and that is and this is not just traditional change management or change agility, guys. This goes beyond that and understanding how our nervous system and how our brains work, and understanding that we do, no matter how great the change is, no matter how coveted the technology is, no matter we could be advocating for bringing AI into our teams because of some of the productivity or the workflow gains or some of the creative ways that we want to work with it. And then once it gets embedded, we could actually find ourselves still in a moment of freeze because our physiology, our cognitive brain, the cognitive portion of our brain understands the complexity of what we're introducing, but our physiology is still in kind of like, wait, what's happening here, right? And there's a hormonal change. There's a lot that goes into
Right. Well,
when
they're
you,
the neurotransmitters that are literally soaking through your brain as you're experiencing the technology in
right.
a good way or perceived as a threatening or negative way could have an impact on that. And it is at the individual level and at the group level
Right.
and at the organizational level. So I
And it
agree with
gets
you. What
magnified,
are
right?
those moves? Yeah.
Yeah, one of the best responses I always chuckle at is when organizations are very practiced in the freeze response. Their normal response is, "Let's form a committee, right? And let's study this." It feels like you're acting and moving forward, and we're being very prudent. They use words like, "Let's be very prudent. Let's be very careful." And of course, if you're in a first mover or a early innovator organization, you're in a historically like Silicon Valley type of environment, that's typically not the culture because you're in rapid experimentation, et cetera. But a lot of firms that are really adopting AI right now are not necessarily first movers. They may
Right.
not be
They're not
laggards.
move fast, break things. They're like adopt and cut our way to growth. How can we do that? Um, I agree with you.
Or they may be slightly innovative in some key areas, but there may be parts of the organizational culture that lag, and thus trying to get the experimentation mindset and also just even shorten that time. You were talking about the freeze can take 2 minutes, right? 2 hours, 2 days, hopefully not 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, but we all know at least one person in our lives who's still a bit frozen on, and won't touch anything related to AI or any other kind of new tool, for example. If we can shorten that time, right, then that helps us see the trend under the trend. It helps us see more systemically and not just look at the tool, but see how that changes the entire ecosystem of not only the workflow, but how we're creating value for our customers internally or externally. So that's the first step. We've got to work with our nervous systems and
Hmm.
work with our colleagues to see more broadly and not to get beyond the blinded by the light, right? What about how do we then create more of that alignment? What's your experience with moving, kind of being congruent with not only what we value, but and bringing that forward, but then being able to create something new, try, even if it's not the culture. What do you
Well,
find?
I think find space for it for a leader who's trying something new.
Mhm.
Name that that quarter is going to be for experimentation. And
Right.
it
Yeah.
takes the stakes down on the instant need to gratify the numbers game
Mhm.
that, whether it's reporting out, but if you let everyone in the organization know, hey, this is a quarter we are experimenting with this idea and we need the space to do that, whether it's a revenue, target you're looking at or headcount or something around that where there's always a real reason it's stuck
Yeah.
and name it out loud but without committing. That is a courageous way of saying we're trying this on for size, but you're letting people know that you haven't made your decision, but you are not in freeze. You are
Yes.
trying it on for size. You're saying, does this work? Does this meet our needs? And it is a way of also naming that we want to get this right
Yeah.
versus I think a very challenging position for leaders is that they have to be right all the time. They have to make
Mm,
decisions that are
mm,
100% right, to be inquisitive, is to then doubt yourself. And that in the, parlance of leadership is showing weakness, whether it's really weakness or actually self-reflection and understanding who are we becoming as this company?
yeah.
Who do we want to be as this corporation unfolds in this new space? Let's try this on
Yeah.
and give it a run and see how it feels aligned with our mission, our goals,
For sure.
our shareholder value. And it's not to be soft, but it's to be more flexible, in fact, more inquisitive, and have a more generative growth mindset as a leader.
I think the Fuji story, as contrasted with the Kodak story, if you've ever done that whole case study analysis, is a great example of what you just described. So Fujimori-san, the CEO at the time, for those of you who are not familiar with the story, actually faced the same digital revolution in photography at print, right, from print to digital, and actually went forward to all the stakeholders, the employees. Imagine doing this to your shareholders and your board and saying, you know what, for centuries, for a good long time, we've been all about print and this is the human tradition. And now we're moving to digital. And in fact, we're moving beyond that. So it's not just our business model, it's an identity. It's a reinvention of who we are becoming. And I actually can't tell you who we're becoming yet. I mean, we are in exploration around
Mm.
I'm paraphrasing. So but it was essentially that kind of message that imagine if you're the employee and you in your old compact was I'm going to lean on the leader to have the most information at the top, understand the terrain, set the path forward. And now the leader has just said, we're becoming something else, not really sure what, but let's go for a ride, right? Like that might do a little number to your nervous system. And yet that was the most flexible, the most agile, the most genius, the most courageous, and then also help the organization to be in co-creation around what that could
Mm,
be. So it allowed them agility, reinvention, and value creation. Whereas we know what
mm,
happened with Kodak, for example.
mhm, mhm.
So, all right. So
And
what is this? Oh, go ahead.
yeah, I was just going to say what I love about that is the courage that it took to be unsure
Yeah.
is the type of leader we need right now is to
Yes.
say, we don't know the next move 100%, but we know who we want to be.
Yes.
And we all agree. We come as a unit, as a corporation with a value that we want to retain trust. We want to deliver the best products to our customers. But so, although Fuji was saying, we don't know how we're going to show up,
Right.
but we know what we value.
Value for sure.
And that is such a courageous, top-notch leadership skill
Yep.
that is very critical for this time and place right now. Yeah.
And I think we're distracted, at least in the organizations that I know and conversations that I have with different leaders. I think a lot of us are distracted by senior leaders saying, let's get more people using AI more quickly. Right. So it's adoption. It's all utilization and adoption focused. And that doesn't necessarily that and then we're going to measure it. We're going to have little spreadsheets and then we're going to track, who's using AI,
Mm.
et cetera.
Mhm.
Utilization does not mean transformation.
Can I share a fun story? Can I?
Yeah.
So when I was first, and anyone who is in pharma is going to like vibe with this one, right? So early on in pharmaceutical sales days, you are asked to see a certain number of people and there are metrics around it and you have to report everything out. And I remember really having a difficult time ever embellishing that number or getting to the number that was required of me to be considered doing really well. And
Mhm.
my boss at the time, and I'll never forget this, he said, and I've shared this many times with other people, he said, Gretchen, the company wants green trucks. Give them green trucks. Like, oh. So when the company wants utilization, you're going to give them utilization because you don't want your name on some list that
For
says
sure.
you're not adopting,
For sure.
you're not buying in, you're not doing
For
what
sure.
is expected of you
Yeah.
versus what I was grounded with was these are meaningful conversations. I cannot be everywhere at once due to traffic. I literally cannot do what you're asking me to do well. Right. I
Mhm.
couldn't do it well with good conscience at the same level that the green trucks needed to like run through. We later, as a group, pushed back on that and we were able to make change. But, there was a time it was just from the top down. This is what you're to do. This is
Sure.
how you do it.
Sure.
And I'm wondering if there's some of that like artifact coming up, which is we're monitoring what you're doing, we're looking at it, we're force ranking you with your colleagues, and then calling that innovation. I don't feel that way. It feels really, in fact, in my body, feels stressful.
Well, I think a lot of leaders are grappling with that and or the assumption that utilization equals immediate productivity gains, right? Because we want to measure that, we want to say at the highest level of the organization that we've spent X number of dollars on AI. Therefore, that translates into number of users. Therefore, that translates into the following efficiencies and productivity. And that fits like on a slide, you know, for the board. But it doesn't necessarily mean that there's true transformation happening in the workflows. Now, there could be some really great case studies and case in point that we could
Mhm.
highlight, but I think it puts a lot of us in a difficult place to say, I get you want the green truck of AI adoption. And this happened like a couple weeks ago. Another one of our colleagues said she was at this big event, a worldwide event that had CEOs from all over, and they asked how many of you in this room of like what was it, 1,000 or so,
Mhm.
how many of you use AI every day? Like almost every hand went up. How many of you have seen true transformation as
Yeah.
a result of AI? Like 10 hands, she said, went up, right?
Right.
So
And these are by the way, just for the listeners, this group of individuals are literally leaders around the globe in AI. So it was not like you're asking, ice cream delivery people. They were asking people who actually work in AI. And I thought that was so telling. Yes, I
yes.
use it, but I don't know if I use it to its highest ability and if I'm co-creating.
And that
Hooper.
might be the challenge. I know Hooper's like ready to join in the AI conversation. There's gonna next podcast, your dog and AI. Uh,
I'll have him on my lap next time. He'll be right here.
all right, so let's summarize like what might, if you're a leader today in a large firm, you're dealing with a lot of complexity, you may be getting pressure to drive adoption, you might be wanting yourself to actually integrate the latest technology. You're thoughtful about wanting to bring the best of your own executive judgment, the best of your own leadership thinking, while supplementing that or engaging with AI to expand your thinking. So what are some moves that the leader can take to make sure that we're not blinded by the light of what we knew or blinded by the light of what we're rewarded by, but we're actually seeing clearly and then taking that clarity to move something into momentum? What would be one of the first things that we could say?
Well, I would say, change the question you ask in reviews. Like,
Mm.
instead of saying how much AI are you using, or how many of our leaders are using it or adopting it, ask if they can see the readiness. Do they feel it's effective? Change, it's not the number, but it's the quality of the work that's being put out. And then you get a real sense if people are grappling with using their own thought process and then bringing it to a more sophisticated level and using AI as a thought partner, or are they just sending really good emails really quickly? Right? Because you really want to
That we can
extend,
all tell were written by ChatGPT, by the way,
by
because
the
they
way,
forgot to
yeah.
personalize them and ask, please make my email sound human, which I think is the funniest thing to watch.
It is, but the real questions, and we've talked about quality of questions in the past,
Yeah,
Leanne, and this is something that I'm really passionate about. But are we asking questions that lead to the results of the goals that we have? And if it's green trucks and everyone's adopted it and they're saying, uh-huh, yeah, I'm
check
using it all
that
the time.
box.
Oh yeah, check, check.
Uh-huh.
Or I have unlocked a high level of productivity. I feel more capable than before. I have an insight worth sharing with my
Right.
team. Those are the indications that you have the clarity and the co-creation you're looking for.
And I think this is what you as a leader can do right now this quarter with AI. Yeah, your organization is going to be asking for the equivalent of give them a green truck, which it might be AI adoption, completing a spreadsheet showing productivity gains, whatever that is. Okay, great. And how can you do what Gretchen you said earlier? This quarter for the next 90 days, we're going to be experimenting with how we can honor our values and sense into like how we can create greater value to our customers. We're going to reduce some customer points of friction. You're asking different questions. You're asking AI to challenge you. And then you're actually putting some time, money, or effort into a pilot, maybe, right? That's courage too. That's courageous action rather than letting the opportunity die on the vine, dying of oxygen. You're actually going to create space where the courageous questions can be called. We experiment a little bit with it. That means you have to, as a leader, allocate some
Mm.
dollars or some time at least, right? And maybe borrow some resources from some other part of the organization to reflect and experiment on some ways that you could create value. And then I know we always talk about co-creation, and this is not just humans and AI co-creating together. It's also looking at how can we create greater readiness in the team to co-create that way forward as a team, a la the Fuji example. Like our value is this way. Here's what we're going to courageously experiment with. How can we co-create that future? We're partnering with AI to get there. All of these things together, guys, create some momentum. And you can scope it for a 90-day period, test it out, see what the learnings are. So then when you're reporting back on your green trucks or your utilization or whatever, you're also starting a dialogue. You're starting a dialogue on here's what you asked for, and we're concerned that we could be blinded by the light of what we already know in this or whatever language you want to use. But this only gets us so far, right? Information doesn't mean transformation. Utilization is not transformation. What can we evolve into, and what can we see more broadly when we allocate some time? And I think these are very practical next steps that leaders can take.
I do too. Thank you so much, Leanne. Great to see you as always. And thanks for letting Hooper be part of the podcast today.
I know. I love there must have been something that piqued his interest. So anyway.
Yeah, he just trotted upstairs. Anyway, so good to see everybody. Good to see you, Leanne.
Great to see you, Gretchen. And leaders, we'll see you next time on Deeply Human Leading. Thanks for spending this time with us. If something landed, sit with it. That pause is actually where the real work happens. And if you're navigating this shift at your organization and you'd like to bring this conversation inside your walls, go ahead and find us at deeplyhumanleading.com. If today's episode landed with you, share it with somebody that you think could really use it. The ripple starts there. Until next time, stay curious and stay human.